At this point in both of their recruiting processes, I feel very confident that Kentucky basketball will land either Chaz Lanier or Jaxson Robinson, and maybe, just maybe, they'll get them both.
You are Locked On Kentucky, your daily podcast on the Kentucky Wildcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, what's going on, Big Blue Nation? Welcome on into Locked On Kentucky, your daily Kentucky Wildcats podcast. I'm your host, Lance Dawe, and on today's episode of Locked On Kentucky, going to be giving you an opinion, a status update on both Chaz Lanier and Jaxson Robinson. I believe that Kentucky will either land the North Florida or the BYU transfer, and there is a world where somehow Kentucky manages to land them both. Also on today's episode of Locked On Kentucky, we are going to talk about a player that Mark Pope and his staff saw during the EYBL circuit just earlier this past week, a player that is very intrigued with Kentucky basketball alongside some other high-profile schools. And then finally, we're going to wrap up the show today with a player that's actually visiting today alongside Chaz Lanier, three-star Jamie Vinson. What do we know about him and how could he fit into Mark Pope's system? I'll go ahead and tell you he would fit perfectly. Today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business, and that's why LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. You can post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions apply. Thank you so much for making Locked On Kentucky your first listen every single day. Want to remind everyone out there that we are free and available on all platforms. If you are watching on YouTube, I would greatly appreciate it if you subscribed to the show. And if you are listening on podcast, I would appreciate it if you subscribed there as well. So let's go ahead and get into it. Chaz Lanier and Jaxson Robinson, the two players at the top of Kentucky's board in the transfer portal. Ladies and gentlemen, I am here to tell you today that Kentucky will land at least one of them. Now, are they going to land both? I feel like it's a very unlikely scenario, which we will walk through here in just a few minutes. But I want to start off the top here by saying I feel pretty confident that Kentucky is going to get at least one. And if they are able to get at least one, I feel like they feel pretty confident in their roster heading into the summer. I think Kentucky is in a very, very good spot. The fact that this staff was able to essentially put together an 11 to 12-man rotation in about a month and a few days change, give or take, is incredibly impressive. And it's not just your kind of like average contributor transfer portal players, right? They've been able to go out and get some really good players that not only are good in their own right individually, but I think fit exactly what this staff was looking for. And Mark Pope has said as much recently to different media outlets about how he and his staff have been blessed with the opportunity to essentially go out and get every single player that they wanted at that position. And if they were not able to get 1A, they were able to essentially get 1B instead of having to work down to their second tier of portal candidates, or portal prospects, I should say, that they wanted to engage with. Great Osabor and Jeremy Roach, to me, are the only two misses I think that the staff has had. And frankly, I think Osabor was just more of a matter of, we don't want to pay what you want to be paid, and so we are going to take other options. It wasn't that Kentucky lost him. It's that they realized that they could go a different route, i.e. Brandon Garrison, and I feel like they feel pretty confident with Amari Williams and Garrison at that 5 spot. And at the power forward spot, I think Kentucky's going to end up being okay. So I feel confident with where the roster is right now, and obviously we know the story with North Florida transfer Chaz Lanier. We've talked about him a ton on the show. We were talking about him when he entered the portal before Kentucky even reached out to him, just about how efficient he was, statistically the most efficient shooter in college basketball a season ago, shooting 51% from the floor, 44% from three, averaging 19.7 points per game. He grabbed rebounds, he grabbed assists. He was defensively not the best prospect, and I think that showed during his G League combine, but overall, just a pure shooter. That is exactly what Kentucky's looking for. Kentucky's not looking for another defensive guard. They're looking for somebody that can go out there and lead the team in scoring. And frankly, just to kind of be honest with you, even if Lanier is not statistically the most impressive defender, not from like box stats of like blocks and steals, but from like defensive efficiency and different things like that. Even if he's not that, I can only imagine that anything that Kentucky gets through the portal defensively is going to be as good or possibly better than what we saw last season. I think that the cohesive product Mark Pope is putting together, Lanier or not, will be good to okay defensively. And that's much better than what we saw a season ago, where Kentucky was just flat out poor. Lanier, though, I think that he's going to either end up at Kentucky or Tennessee. You hear the rumors flying around about how things went during his visit at BYU. If I'm not mistaken, Trilly Donovan actually said that essentially BYU understands that they cannot match what Kentucky and Tennessee want to do in the NIL game. They actually utilized Mark Pope both positively and negatively during their recruitment of Lanier. And then Lanier right now, as I speak, is wrapping up a visit to Kentucky. He is there alongside, again, Jamie Vinson, who we will talk about later on in the show. And then he goes to Tennessee tomorrow. And whenever you and I talked about this on Saturday about how Lanier did not have a scheduled visit to the Volunteers, there were questions online about whether or not Tennessee was still technically in the race. And they are still in the race, very much so. It's just Kentucky has made up so much ground since the beginning of it that it really does feel like somewhere between a 50-50 shot to a slight Kentucky lean, at least right now. Lanier, obviously, as we know, it's the same thing with Great Osobor. It's the same thing with different high-profile players in the portal. He's going to be asking for a lot of NIL money, and it's just the fact of whether or not Tennessee or Kentucky want to compete for that, or even if one school wants to cough up even a portion of what the other school is willing to lay down on the table for this North Florida transfer. I think right now it's very clear Kentucky wouldn't have jumped into this. I feel like I've seen other people write about this recently. Kentucky wouldn't have jumped into this and like gotten him on a visit and gotten down to his final 3 schools essentially without knowing there was going to be a price to be paid. And I feel like they're comfortable with that, knowing what he brings to the table: scoring and shooting efficiency. That's what Kentucky wanted to add to their backcourt. This is quite literally the best prospect on the table right now for you to get to fill that hole. Kentucky's going to lay out some money for him, and my guess is that they had some stuff saved up on the side to kind of get this thing going. So Chaz Lanier, I feel really good right now with where Kentucky stands with him. And then to talk about Jaxson Robinson for just a second, still going through NBA draft combine processes, and it really is kind of an iffy 50-50 as to whether or not he does actually return to college or whether he does stay in the draft. And we've heard the reports, we've read the things online, we've heard the rumors. It's not going to take a ton to keep Jaxson Robinson in the NBA draft. And right now it seems like there's not a ton being given to Robinson, but again, it's not really a whole lot needed from different scouts or different teams saying that they have interest in him. If he gets a second round grade by enough teams, I should say, he's going to stay in the draft. If he does not, Kansas, Kentucky, BYU, those are the 3 schools that you're going to be looking at. Does he return to BYU? Does Kansas offer him a big NIL package like they've done with transfer portal players in the past? There's nothing wrong with that. I'm just acknowledging that they have. Does Kentucky throw the bank at him alongside his relationship with Mark Pope? Are they able to kind of work something out there? I'm not sure if Robinson will end up coming to Kentucky, but at least the door is not closed. In fact, if he does return from the NBA Combine, I would actually feel pretty comfortable with Robinson's chances to land at Kentucky, especially if Chaz Lanier does not come. If one of these guys ends up announcing clearly they're not coming back to college or they're not coming to Kentucky, Kentucky's going to pursue the other guy, and I think they're going to lay everything out for them because, again, these are the top 2 prospects that the Wildcats want. So Kentucky, I think, is going to get one of these guys one way or another. They're going to fill a major hole at power forward or at shooting guard. I firmly believe that. There's a small world where Kentucky ends up getting both of them. Somehow, Mark Pope is able to work his magic and get both of these guys to help round out this roster. But I think Kentucky may take that final scholarship in another direction. So let me know what you think in the comments below. Will Kentucky land one or both of these guys? And if you would like to pick which one you want, Leave your selection in the comments below. All right, we've got a player, similar last name to a former BYU player that Mark Pope has had, Tounde Yessoufou, I believe that's how you pronounce his first name. He has been contacted by Kentucky, and he showed out during the EYBL circuit. I want to talk about this guy in just a second. Before I do that, though, I want to tell you guys about our friends over at LinkedIn Jobs. When you are hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. And that's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs, because LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. It is not just another job board. They help you hire professionals you cannot find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. You can post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That is linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, continuing along here on the Monday edition of Locked On Kentucky, Lance Dawe hanging out here with you. Really appreciate you guys checking out the show today. If you have not subscribed to the YouTube channel or the podcast feed, wherever you are tuned in, I would appreciate it if you did so. If you want to go check out my Twitter at @LanceDawe_, I have pinned a link to join the Locked On Kentucky Discord. It's free. It's just a place to go and chat about all things happening with Kentucky athletics. It's not an insider's board, but it is a place for us to just kind of hang out. And I think it's going to be a super fun environment whenever the season, Kentucky basketball and football season, absolutely rolls around. So you can check that out at LanceDawe_ on Twitter. All right, I want to talk about a player that Kentucky basketball really watched intently during the EYBL circuit. I believe his name is Tunde. It's Tounde. I think that's Tunde Yessoufou is how you pronounce his last name. A 5-star prospect in the 2025 class that Kentucky has taken interest in. And there's a very interesting story over on KSR about how this kid, who is a native of West Africa, he said that Kentucky actually played a pretty heavy role in him taking interest in basketball to begin with. Here's a quote from Yessoufou. He said, "Nobody in my family ever played basketball. I just saw it and loved it. I knew I wanted to put my heart into it. Coming to the United States, Kentucky was definitely the main thing I watched on social media and doing my research. I feel like it's a great opportunity to be around people like that." You can just continue to talk about how kind of like Coach Cal and that staff were able to kind of build things up there. He said, definitely, by the way, Coach Cal is playing, not only Coach Cal, but just the environment. You can tell it's a great environment with the fans. Everybody loves it. I have no idea how many people are in Rupp Arena during those games, but it's a lot. And not only the campus, but outside the campus, I just love being around people like that. Mark Pope and his staff, I believe Jason Hart specifically, were out watching the EYBL Session 3. I think it was in Indianapolis this past weekend. Yes, it was in Indy this past weekend. And there were a lot of different players, Pope, and a number of really, really high-profile coaches were watching, including Coach Cal, who got to kind of talk with Pope for what looks like the first time officially, now that Pope is donning the blue and white coaching the Wildcats. But Pope was able to make a connection with Yessoufou, according to KSR. Yessoufou said, quote, "We're bonding and building a great relationship. They definitely love the way I play hard. You can tell when I step on the floor, I play hard and try to destroy anybody in front of me. They love my energy." And then he talked a little bit about Coach Pope himself. You can tell he's a person who is outgoing and he'll tell you things you need to work on. That's one of the things I like about coaches now, not only telling you what you're good at, but also just what you need to improve on. His energy, man, his energy is just amazing. I love being around coaches like that. I feel like he pushed me hard to be the best I can be. I love him. Tunde Yessoufou, a 5-star power forward in the 2025 recruiting class at 6'6", 210 pounds, number 6 power forward in that 2025 class, number 3 player in the state of California, number 22 overall prospect nationally. He has a visit lined up to Arizona here in just a few weeks, according to KSR. But I would highly encourage you guys, Go watch how he performed during the spring EYBL circuit. You can watch just how lethal he was in transition. And we'll talk about this in just a second with Jamie Vinson. But the difference between prospects like Yessoufou and Vinson, I think first and foremost, watching them is the fluidity. Yessoufou with the ball in his hands at 6'5", 6'6", is actually extremely comfortable. And initially, after seeing his jump shot, I didn't think he would be the most consistent three-point shooter. But Jamie Shaw of On3 recently did an article breaking down the top performers during this Indianapolis EYBL circuit, and he said one of the best players was Tunde Yessoufou. He said the 6'5" guard from California simply puts up numbers across the board each time on the floor. On the weekend, Yessoufou averaged 16.8 points and 5.5 rebounds while shooting 38.9% from three. He's an explosive, quick twitch athlete, and that's definitely something you see. Again, the fluidity, just to be able to handle the ball comfortably, to drive down and score in a variety of ways, whether it be with touch at the rim or explosion at the rim, going to dunk the ball. He really is a pure talent at that's what I would consider, honestly, a potential small forward spot. I would play him at small forward, just watching his game. And when it comes to his outside shot, it's not like he was being left open a ton, but he was able to consistently knock down shots that the defense was giving him. He was also able to do a lot of different things off of spot ups, as far as being able to kind of fake and drive into the defense. Again, a very aggressive, quick player. Somebody that I really did enjoy watching during these highlights of the EYBL circuit, somebody that I didn't truly know just how involved this Kentucky staff was with him until we started to hear some of the reports coming out of it. So super, super fun player that is a legitimate five-star prospect that I think, as far as his transition game goes and as far as his three-point shooting goes, he'd be somebody that would fit very well at small or power forward in a Mark Pope system. Again, quick, aggressive, likes to take shots, and statistically was able to, like Jamie Shaw mentioned, put up a ton of numbers. You can also watch during his highlights, he actually got a decent amount of his points off of different post-ups. And it's not necessarily the weight here for Yessoufou, because again, he's listed at 6'5", 6'6", 210, 215 pounds, give or take, but he's just extremely physical down low. He's just got a lot of aggression and a lot of energy, and I think that's a reason why Mark Pope and company like him. And Yessoufou said as much. It's a player that likes to go out there and pretty much put his heart and soul on the line whenever it comes to actually playing the game like he cares about it and playing like he wants to win and compete. And that's something that I think Mark Pope has really put an emphasis on during his first month and change as Kentucky basketball's new head coach, is the fact that he wants to be able to get kids that want to play for Kentucky. The fact that this kid has spoken so highly of Kentucky, saying that it was a reason why he kind of moved from Africa to start to play basketball, the only person in his family to do so. And now he's been able to begin to establish a relationship who seems to be somewhat like-minded. As far as personality goes, I think that the personality shows here on the court for Yessoufou, and much more with Mark Pope and his coaching style and how he presents himself to the media. Just two guys that are excited about what they're doing. I think that what Yessoufou would bring to the table would be just extremely valuable for the team next season, especially considering what you have at that wing spot right now. You've got a bunch of older guys that are going to be graduating and moving on. I think that this is a player to absolutely watch. Again, out of St. Joseph's High School in Santa Maria, California, the 6'6" Tunde Yessoufou. I believe that's how you pronounce his name. So let me know what you think about Yessoufou in the comments below. Do you think Kentucky should continue to pursue him? I'd encourage you to go do a little bit of YouTube bouncing around. Can't show videos on the channel here of him, but I would encourage you to go watch some of his highlights during the EYBL circuit. It's a pure five-star talent. A three-star talent that Kentucky basketball has on campus today that looks like a Mark Pope center. What could he bring to the table? A former Vanderbilt decommit. We'll talk about that in just a second. Before I do that, though, I want to tell you guys about our friends over at FanDuel. It's winner take all time in the NBA and NHL, and FanDuel is giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. So you can visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. That is FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. All right, wrapping up the Monday edition of Locked On Kentucky. Lance Dawe hanging out here with you. Appreciate you checking out the show. Let's talk here for a second about Jamie Vinson. Vinson, a 6'11" power forward, has taken a visit to Kentucky. He should have wrapped it up earlier today. He was alongside Chaz Lanier on his visit to Lexington. Just about a month ago. I was going to say a few weeks ago, but it's almost dead out of a month. Jamie Vinson decommitted from Vanderbilt. It's a 3-star prospect in the 2025 class, and he said, quote, "I am thankful to Coach Jerry Stackhouse and Coach Andy Fox, who recruited me to Vanderbilt University and Commodore Nation. Due to the recent coaching change, I am planning to decommit from Vanderbilt University and reopen my recruitment." 6'11", 210 pounds out of Oak Hill Academy in Austin, Texas. The number 239 overall prospect nationally, number 41 center in the 24/7 Sports composite ratings, and the number 11 player in the state of Texas. South Carolina, Rutgers, and Kentucky. Those are the 3 players that you need to be watching out for. He just took a visit to South Carolina on May 15th, took a visit a couple of days ago to Rutgers, and again, he is currently on campus wrapping up a visit to UK. The thing to note about Vinson that really does stand out when you talk about what Mark Pope kind of likes to do is he wants a 5-man who can pass the ball and can shoot. And that's exactly what Vinson brings to the table. At 6'11", just 210 pounds, a more wiry frame reminds you of maybe some of the centers that Kentucky had on last year's roster, players that could step out, knock down a couple of shots. Aaron Bradshaw comes to mind. I think this kid is a little bit more fluid than Aaron Bradshaw, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he's significantly better when it comes to outside shots, but I do like his form. And I'll say this, it's compared to guys like Yessoufou, again, the thing that stands out here is fluidity. And then honestly, I think confidence. At times, even during his highlight reel, Vinson looked a little timid, even though he was physically able to kind of dominate at times around the rim, and then whenever it came to taking outside shots. I would love to see this kid put on not necessarily more weight, but just add a little bit more strength. And if he's able to do that, I think that he would be a very, very formidable stretch 5. He was praised coming out of high school for his shooting ability and then, quote, physical tools to be impactful on the defensive end with his instincts and time around the basket. And you can see that. He definitely does like to rack up blocks. He's very good at anticipating shots. But again, there's a level of timidness, I think, that you need to see more confidence and more aggression in his game. And maybe it really does come with time. I think, honestly, that may be the answer here for Vinson, is that he gets more time kind of being comfortable with his frame as he's grown a couple of inches over the past year or so. It looks like from 6'9" to 6'11". He, I think, is kind of still obviously developing, and physically, I think he's going to take a leap once he does get to college, and Kentucky would probably honestly be a perfect place for him to do so, knowing the resources and knowing what Kentucky has done in the past. Vinson would fit. He would fit what Mark Pope wants to do. He wants a guy that can knock down outside shots, can pass, and play with some aggression on the defensive end. 3 and D. You want that at your 5, which is crazy and honestly very entertaining. Vinson brings that, and I think that it's a process to get him to where he's playing at his highest level, because there's definitely potential here, and I would like this prospect. I think this is somebody Kentucky could absolutely pick up and add to this year's roster. 2024 class. That's the whole point of us talking about it. I can't believe I said he was in 2025. He's in the 2024 class, and the reason that we're talking about him today is that he could be that 13th scholarship. Mark Pope said to John Rothstein he's probably reserving that for somebody that would reclassify or somebody that decommits from somewhere. Vinson could very well be that 3rd center that Kentucky has, and would he be able to play? I doubt it this season, but he's somebody that I think can be a project for the Wildcats that can develop into something that is really interesting down the line. And I do not want to hear anybody say anything about 3-star prospects. Adieu, Thiero. That's all I'll say. All right, that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Kentucky. Hey, you can follow the show on Twitter at Locked On UK. You can follow me on Twitter at @LanceDawe_, and you can follow the show over on Instagram. That is at Kentucky Podcast. Any questions, comments, concerns, leave those in the YouTube comments below. Hit me on the socials. I will see you all tomorrow for another episode of Locked On Kentucky. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and God bless.